Now, it seems to be one of the things in the compact is that migration is a human right. Do you believe that?
Migration is not I don't think that compact says that migration is a human right. It says that migrants have human rights.
Oh, okay then.
That's totally different.
And one of those rights would be to migrate out of their country that they're coming from?
No, the compact has different elements. One of the elements is how to create conditions for people not to be on the move.
Okay.
So that's one of the elements. But when they move, they are entitled to human rights as everybody
I
else.
see. Now, what do you make of those countries like the United States that want nothing to do with this compact?
I think it's a sovereign decision of every state whether they are going to be part of something or not.
Okay then.
So that's a decision of the U.S.
Do you think when it comes to migration that there should be one organization, such as the United Nations, that would manage migration for the entire world?
I think that it's very difficult to have one organization to manage migration for the entire world. The point is to make a framework which can be used to manage migration collectively. So it's not, you have to know that the United Nations is the organization, but it's made up of member states and they make decisions.
Okay. Now, the compact is non-binding, we've been told.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, what is the point of signing it in the first place?
First, it's not signed; it's being adopted now, endorsed in a way. That's the first thing, and I think that people, when states have their political will to resolve certain issues, it's not only that you have to have a binding document; you have to have a political will to implement certain political commitments, because as you know there are legally binding documents that are not respected. So it depends on the political will of countries whether certain elements or the compact in its entirety will be implemented. Okay. But I think it's very important to underline that states are guaranteeing their sovereign right to decide about their migration policy. Okay. And they are of course going to cooperate on resolving huge problems that are caused by irregular migration.
And ma'am, what country what country are you from?
I'm coming from Macedonia.
Macedonia.
Yeah.
And how was the experience right there with migrants for your country?
Yes, we had a huge migrant flow in 2015, and that is how we realized it's very important to have a global, regional and international cooperation to deal with the issue of especially chaotic flows of migrants as we had in Europe in 2015, 14-15.
Thank you. What country are you from, sir?
I'm from Sweden.
Sweden.
Yeah.
How is migration working for Sweden right now?
Well, we've had challenges. We've been part of the countries that had a real challenge back a couple of years ago when the idea for this process came about. In Europe, many countries in Europe had real challenges with the enormous influx of people, not least from the crisis in Syria, and that number of immigrants or asylum seekers in a very short period of time is a challenge for any country. We were not the only one. Those countries where the people traveled through and where they ended up, in many cases Sweden and Germany, had enormous burden. So we realized, like most of the countries that are participating here, that to get to grips with the challenges and also the benefits that migration can bring, you need to work together, between countries of origin, countries of transit and countries of destination. And today, most countries are all of those.
Is it not a fear, though? I've never been to Sweden, but from what I've read of migration, especially from Islamic countries into Sweden, that there are certain cities or towns in Sweden that are no-go areas, that some migrants aren't embracing Swedish values and principles. Would you say that's accurate?
There are challenges of integration, I think, almost anywhere you go. And particularly when you have a huge amount of people coming in a very short space of time. That puts any society under a lot of stress. But these notions of no-go areas and all that doesn't fit with our perception of reality. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. We have challenges, definitely. We have enormous difficulties with integration and to get people to live well together and to integrate. Some immigrants integrate quickly, get a job, learn Swedish. Others have bigger difficulties. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on what how the degree of education you have, whether you have a profession, if you have skills, all kinds of things. Much less what religion you have than anything else. But of course that's a challenge, and that's part of the things that I think we need. By collaborating internationally, we need to come to grips with.
And you raise a very good point about integration. I guess that's the fear, sir, that you will have either newcomers integrate into the host country culture, or they'll just stay in little silos, if you will, and not integrate, not cross-pollinate with the general populace. Would you say that's one of the challenges for Sweden right now?
That is always a challenge. I mean, we've had immigration to my country since a long time, but in the 70s we had a lot of immigration because we had a huge and acute lack of labor. So we had a lot of immigration from Southern Europe, from the countries of at that time Yugoslavia, from other countries in the south of Europe, Italians, and I don't know what, and that immigration that time helped build the strong economy that Sweden have today. Were there no problems of integration at that time? There was. Many of them went back. Some stayed and are part of our society today. That's why we have pizza and all kinds of things. And
thank God for pizza. It's one of my favorite foods.
Yes, it is. And I think those kind of challenges happen with any kind of migration. But I mean, the thing here is to make immigration work for the benefit of societies, all societies, and to deal with the negatives of immigration that you've also pointed to.
Sir, speaking of what's going on here, there seems to be an ongoing narrative of migration being a human right. Do you think that is such?
No, it's not. I think the narrative is, or should be, I don't know how it's portrayed sometimes, migration is not a human right. Migration happens, and it has been happening throughout, the centuries. But the human right we're talking about here is the inalienable human rights of individuals to be treated with a minimum of respect, whether they are immigrants or not. I mean, you don't kill immigrants. You don't put the people in prison without undue process. You don't, So these are the things. It's not that there is a right to migration. I don't think that exists.
But we're from Canada, of course, and I know the migrants coming in, or the irregular immigrants, as our Prime Minister likes to call them, they're certainly not dealt with harshly. On the contrary, they're given all the benefits. There's no persecution of them. There's no incarceration of them. So I'm wondering, what would be the point of signing on to an agreement like this in the first place?
There's so many different things in this compact and some things are applicable or useful for some countries, but they have no direct relevance for others. So it's different from country to country. I mean, many of these, I think our conclusion is that there's basically nothing in this compact that we have not already accepted or not already respecting by way of our legislation and the mechanisms in place for migration. But that could be very different from for other countries. I think country like Canada too is probably most of the aims, the objectives. I mean, it's not a binding document, are pretty much respected and already by a country like Canada too.
And one last question, sir. What do you make of those countries, starting, I guess, with the United States on down, that want nothing to do with this conference?
I think it's a mistake. I can understand the fears, but I think they are misinformed. This is the whole idea here is that to harness the positive sides of migration, but also to get to grips with the negatives. There are negative sides of migration. We need to collaborate together. We need international cooperation. So this is a choice whether you think you can achieve these aims with or without international cooperation. And those who decide to stay away are saying, we will achieve what we want anyway. We don't want to. And I think that's wrong. But I can understand the fears. But in most cases, most of the fears I've heard are misinformed. I mean, from the fact that this is not a binding declaration. It's not a legally binding document. It's not signed on to. It's establishing ambitions and goals for further cooperation. I think that's one of the most spread misapprehensions about what this is all about. But fundamentally, it's about choosing whether you think you can achieve, you can harness the benefits of migration, or you could do away with the negatives without cooperating with other countries. But I don't think you can.
Hey folks, to see all our reports that you're not going to see anywhere else, please go to rebelun.com. That's rebelun.com. And while you're there, if you can, please make a donation so that we can bring you the kind of journalism you are not going to receive anywhere else.